Well, here we are, the end of a 48-hour sprint. Glad that you've made it with us this far. So this is going to be our final panel discussion today. Before I kick off, we're going to welcome, this one's a little bit unique. We've got a sponsor for this event who is also part of the panel. And as a result, it's going to feel a little bit like a long commercial, and I'm going to do my best to add some color to that, but you'll see, I think this is going to work. And I think that this topic is one that we've seen woven through as a thread through all the previous sessions. So bear with us. I think you're going to still get value out of this. I'm looking forward to it a lot. So to introduce our sponsor today, I'm going to have Josh Burt, who's the National Sales Manager from Dish Fiber, come on up, and he's got a little kind of introduction to the company, to the product, to the value prop, and then we'll come down and sit at the table and talk about it a little bit more. So, Josh.
All right, thanks, Brandon. To kick things off today, I'll just jump right into it because we have the panel coming after. But wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about Dish Fiber and walking you through it. Trying to make it a little interesting, so I got a couple cool videos to share with you. But at the highest level, Dish Fiber has the value prop of increasing revenue for multifamily properties and giving the residents an amazing experience above and beyond what they're probably currently experiencing. So we'll dive into one of the videos. All right, there's a pretty good bass in the system in here. I like it. All right, so you just got a high-level overview. I'll streamline through this, but what is Dish Fiber? It's premium gig-enabled managed Wi-Fi. It's live streaming TV and the ability for residents in multifamily to do no-hassle upgrades. So somebody who's interested in a more traditional TV experience can have it, but it's optional. We get into the premium gig-enabled Wi-Fi. So this is broadband speed managed Wi-Fi throughout an entire property. So it includes common areas. It's accessible for all the residents in their homes. It also can go in a gym. We can go outside to a pool. Any area that really needs to be covered, we can cover it within a multifamily community. And this Wi-Fi is on a secure personal network, which is a really important part in today's world, especially with people working from home, that they have that level of security built in to their internet that protects them when they're accessing their corporate networks. It's live streaming TV, so there's the ability to customize packages for an entire community, so they can choose up to 72 channels, which includes local channels and premium entertainment channels. This can be accessed anywhere on the property through a browser, or there's even the opportunity to access it with apps. Today we're already on Amazon Fire. We've been waiting for Roku for a really long time, and I would say we're on the 1 yard line with that one, so stay tuned. and the resident can have that experience where their TV follows them anywhere on the property. And for upgrades, there's still a lot of people out there that want the traditional TV experience, especially if they have it now and they're going to be changing. That's available, so the resident can simply get a set-top box from us, plug it in, and then they can have that, what we call 10-foot experience, where they're sitting on the couch, they're watching on their large screen TV, and they have that remote that a lot of people really like in today's world still. We have built-in Google voice search and the ability to upgrade packages. So if someone says, I want to add a bunch of premium content, I want Showtime, I want HBO, I want something of that nature, they can just go in and order it directly from Dish, and they can get it at no contract, no credit check. And then let's talk about what's important for the property owners. So the number one thing I think we all know when someone's making an investment is, what is the return on that investment and how do I make money at it? So I have a video displaying some samples of what the financials look like. So when I'm meeting with clients and they're saying, show me the money, I think that's what that video is all about. It gives a pretty good example side by side. Obviously, those are estimates based on different types of buildings and costs, but I think it paints a pretty good picture of the revenue opportunity and how it can positively impact NOI. And then the other thing that's really important, and I think is kind of a theme that we've seen throughout this conference, is smart communities and what that means and what the current trends are and what people are looking to do and the types of devices that they want to hook up in their communities. Well, having a managed Wi-Fi property-wide system in your MDU is the backbone of smart communities. If you want to hook up multiple devices and have them all function and make sure they're reliable and they work, so they're being monitored on the back end, so if the network is down, that it gets fixed and puts your device back online. Managed Wi-Fi is critical for that space. And it's great for the building as far as a selling tool for residents. It's the opportunity to increase the revenue. It's an attraction to a resident that, hey, we have a system that is going to support all your smart devices, or if you're going to add them as an amenity. And overall, it's going to decrease costs for your staff as far as working and managing everything required with those smart devices, because they'll all be connected on one network. When we install a dish fiber into a community, we can actually create a network just for IoT or for smart devices that they will all run off and be monitored. And so I think three of the main tenets to talk about are consistency. So people have the same experience wherever they travel throughout the building. They're going to have an easy solution. It's reliable, and that comes into the managed side of it. So it's pinged every 30 seconds by a network operations center and can be healed in the background without people even knowing that there's any sort of issues. Bandwidth can be shifted during different times of the day, so they can always have that consistent, reliable network. And then also the flexibility, all the different ways we can install it, the different parts of a building that we can send it to, and the ability to turn it on and off simply for the property management. And then a little background on Dish for anyone who isn't familiar with Dish. Dish is a Fortune 250 company, very well known for satellite television, but over the last 10 to 15 years has been in a transformation into a connectivity company. So currently, there's a national footprint, so it's everywhere in the United States, over 10 million subscribers. We have our own technician force, so there's over 8,000 technicians with offices around the country. So we do all our installations with W-2 employees and not subcontractors. You look at some of the big partnerships we have. On the screen there, we have Amazon, Google, Samsung. We have direct partnerships with all of them. We actually do fulfillment for them on smart home installation and single family right now. We do service for Samsung. And then also the big one that I think a lot of people are talking about is Dish is the 4th wireless carrier in the United States. So currently, Dish covers over 20% of the US with a native O-RAN 5G network. And by the end of June of next year, we'll be over 70% of the United States will be covered. So as you can see, it's diversified from a satellite company. There's a lot of different brands that are listed here. And I think big news for Dish last week was for the 5th year in a row, Dish won the J.D. Power Award for #1 in customer satisfaction. It's the first time that's ever been done in the category. So that's something that we really hang our hat on and take very seriously. And then from a business perspective, something to point out is we have over 2 million units covered in the multifamily space with Dish Television today. And that wraps it up. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so clearly this has been a thread that we've talked about in almost every session. And the question is that in order to get IoT devices into the many places throughout an MDU that will be beneficial to us, this seems to be a foundational step. So let's do some introductions for our other member here on the panel. Josh has already introduced himself. Steve, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your company?
I am Steve Yonke, Director of IT for Continental Properties. We're located in Wisconsin. We are a national multifamily developer. We do 3 business lines, and we are on a pace to do about 4,500 units this year, and we keep increasing that number, so it's been a busy time for us. So.
And you are currently a customer of Dish.
We are.
Okay, so we're going to be able to talk today about what Steve has seen in their company and how they're using Dish and the benefits that they're seeing as a customer, and talk about challenges, talk about benefits, talk about alternatives, and try to dive a little bit deeper into this, looking from both the vendor and from an owner, operator, builder type of position. So first off, let's talk about what are the benefits and advantages that have come to you as you're bundling the connectivity and audiovisual through a vendor like Dish.
If we don't have that infrastructure, that managed secure infrastructure, we can't do any of this smart home stuff. We're trying to find ways to save money, finding ways to get everybody connected, and that's the first thing. It's the customer experience, though, on our end. They walk in and it's hot, it's ready to go. They can go anywhere they want. And then on top of it, with the TV bundling, we have lots of customers who went to streaming. I think everybody's streaming something, and the biggest problem we have right now is what provider am I using for streaming? Is it YouTube TV? Is it Amazon Prime? Is it some other, whatever form? We've got a nice package from Dish that's included, and it's a nice simple package, easy to use, works great, and the customers are saving a ton of money.
So how long ago did you kind of make this transition to managed Wi-Fi in every single property?
So we started probably, I want to say about 5 years ago, I started looking at broadband communities for some provider that could actually handle this type of service. And we went to, I tried a couple of other providers that weren't bad, but I really wanted to have a really big company with a big footprint that could have that customer service and the white glove service. And probably about 3 years ago, Josh, we just sold our first property that we did with you, so.
Yeah, which we can talk about later, but I think it increased your sale price, but
Oh, yeah.
don't want to get any of your top secret information.
Right.
And so there's kind of a spectrum. We've talked about this is managed Wi-Fi. Beforehand, we were talking about there's property-wide Wi-Fi. Can you tell us a little bit of the kind of the difference, Josh, between the two, and maybe why is it that you want to go all the way, and with the benefits that come with managed Wi-Fi?
Yeah, that's a really good point to bring up early in the discussion. There's a lot of providers out there that have property-wide Wi-Fi, which is a good service. It allows an entire property to have Wi-Fi wherever you go. But the big difference with the managed Wi-Fi is it meshes the entire network together, and when we install it, we actually use smart hardware, so smart devices. We put smart switches in every single residence unit. So that reports back to a network operations center in the background that monitors that network, and you can see all the activity down to the unit level or to the common area level, and you can see the bandwidth that's being used. You can see if the bandwidth is appropriate for the structure. You can see if there's any issus. So if
You're not seeing what they're doing, but just seeing how much data they're consuming.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
From a PII perspective. No, it's not showing what websites they're on, but it's showing that here's what's happening down to the hour and minute of the day.
We just resolved this issue, right?
Yeah.
In one of our properties, we had an issue where they were able to come to us and say there was some crazy activity going on, and it was that simple, that fast, so.
And you were able to go to a grandmother who was downloading 25 petabytes of data, right?
A month.
A month.
It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so from the monitoring perspective, but also just for the performance. So we've had situations where, let's say an access point, an individual unit goes down. So on a managed network, it will automatically self-heal and pick up one of the other access points in that area. So from the resident perspective, they don't even realize anything's wrong. And then meanwhile, in the back end, because it's managed, they can remotely reset that access point to turn off and basically do a reset and start over. So you can manage it that way. And the other thing is you have the ability to create multiple networks. So, and I'd mentioned in the intro, for someone who has a smart community and they want, let's say they want door locks set up, smart door locks, or they want to put leak detectors, or they get really advanced and get into hooking up their appliances, we can create a network only for that, just for those devices. And then it can be monitored and managed separately versus off the general ecosphere.
It's not one that's broadcast, but you can connect to it, and then it can keep the traffic on those devices separate and inaccessible from the other networks.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, terrific. Okay. So these are some of the benefits of bundling. Well, we can talk a little bit, the audio visual as well, I think you talked about. So yeah, let's move on and talk about quantifying the value. You showed on the video, it kind of feels like you're having your cake and eating it too, that your residents are paying less than what they would have paid through other solutions, but as an owner-operator, you're making more revenue. Is that definitely the case? Is that what you've seen in what you've deployed?
Absolutely. I can tell you that the numbers that Josh had were extremely reflective of what we are seeing. There's other values besides just that big number that you get from the residents on a monthly basis. It's customer satisfaction because of their customer service outstanding. It's for us, because we build so many projects every year, we've worked with them to go complete soup to nuts all the way from the front to the back. So I have that ongoing value. I have one throat to choke. That's a big term that we like to use, and it's easy to go back, yeah.
So value to the resident, that the resident sees value that, hey, I'm actually paying less than what I maybe paid at the last place I was staying. The internet's likely faster, it's likely more comprehensive throughout the entire property. The managing group is seeing benefits because now it enables and unlocks the opportunity to deploy many other devices on the network that improve operational efficiencies, that provide a better customer experience. And then to the ownership group, it sounds like you guys had a transaction. There was value that was captured there as well because you had that within the property.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd say the resident experience on day one when they're moving in, one of the big features of it is being instant on. So how it works is the resident walks in day one, the property management goes into a system, puts their email in and their unit number and their name, and they get an encrypted email sent to them. They just click on the link, change their password, and now they have access to their account, but now their internet is on. So before they even sometimes enter into their unit for the first time, they're still in the lobby, they already have it turned on and they already are to go to work, and they also have access to their TV immediately. And then from the property management, that's great because now they're not messing around when someone moves in and they're saying, okay, I got to figure out what my internet provider is. I need to get a modem. In some cases, they have to roll a truck and then they have to get it installed. They may not have service right away. So now the management's super hands off and the resident has a really seamless experience.
So to get even into more detail on that, there's a publicly visible Wi-Fi network. They get the email. Is it they're getting a kind of a unique password that they use on that they can use on their phone, they use on their TV, any other devices, and that recognizes that it's part of that account? Is that how it works? Or it's a universal password, and then the next thing that pops up is they kind of have a login and password?
It's an actual encrypted password.
Okay.
So the management doesn't even see what that password is. It's only for the resident. And then they have that encrypted and then they change it the first time.
And then they can use that on any of the devices they want to be able to connect to that particular network.
That is correct.
Slick. All right. So one of the other things that we talked about prior to this is that Dish provides a lot of flexibility that if you're trying to shift the cost of this over to CapEx, and I know that there's some of you out here that's a preference. Others want to shift those costs over to OpEx, that you have a solution both ways. Who wants to talk about this first?
Do you want to cover what you guys are doing today?
Sure. So we have had the flexibility, and we've changed it a little bit with our program. There's all the different important pieces. It's, installing conduit, it's laying the fiber, it's doing the boxes in the units, setting up the, wherever you're going to have your IDFs, things like that.
And what's an IDF?
Intermediate
distribution facility, okay. Correct. Rather than main distribution facility, which is typically located in our clubhouse. So we take a little bit of our network room there. And
sorry, sidetracked, yeah.
Yeah. So one of our big issues that we've had is we haven't included this type of revenue in our pro forma, as our CEO has been concerned with competing things that we're going to talk about later. And we finally proved to him, hey, this is real money, this is coming in, and we are going to then start moving more of our spend into the CapEx so that we can see a larger revenue even still.
Gotcha. So it'll kind of progress as you're working on additional projects. That the OpEx opportunity gives you a chance to deploy it quicker, but then as you're seeing that revenue come in, then you can start shifting that revenue to do more CapEx installations.
Yeah, and it was a little bit of a tough transition for our construction folks as they're getting numbers because of the way ISPs traditionally did it. Hey, we'll do all this, but we're going to take all the money.
Right.
Well, we're the middleman now, and we're taking a lot of that revenue stream.
So if you've got someone, perhaps here in the room, that wants to explore these options, what does that look like for them?
Yeah, so there's no real right answer on the financial model. It's different for different companies and what they're trying to do. But we have the ability to completely finance a project. So if someone's especially when we talk more about retrofitting and other things. If someone doesn't want to invest that money up front, we can build that into a financial model. So we will go site survey a property. We get super granular. We AutoCAD a whole design. We figure out an entire bill of materials down to every screw that's used in every line of cable, a statement of work, so all the resources from a labor perspective that are required to install it. And then we put it together as, here's your upfront CapEx model. We can just build that into the financial model so it's zero cost to get started, which a lot of people are doing on the existing properties. But on some of the greenfield or the building, the new construction, there's some creative ways to do it as far as wrapping it into your loan, the way you tax benefit it in order to pay it up front, and then you get a much lower monthly price. So then you dramatically increase your margins because then it's being financed that way. And so we have that option. And then there's kind of a hybrid. So from an installation perspective, there's a little bit what we're doing with Continental where we're installing parts of it, but not quite all of it. So they have your general contractors. We'll install, we were just using the term IDF, which is a distribution center within, and we'll maybe do the installation to there, but then Continental will take the wiring and run it because they're already doing it in their walls to the unit, in the unit, and then we'll just come in the end and hook up the access point to everything they've already installed and test it and make sure it works.
Yeah, and we have, I think right now, as we speak, we have 22 properties that are under construction. And that amount of oversight and management is just, I don't have time to do all of that. And they work directly with my construction team, and they take it right from there, right from the beginning, right from even before we break ground.
So they become just an extension of your construction team to whatever extent you want them to, whether it's the whole kit and caboodle or whether you want it just to run to the idea.
Yeah, we've set up, we identified right up front, hey, these are your main points of contact. These are all your project managers. These are the on-site folks. They meet with the general contractors and the low voltage guys right away. And, it's been, I won't say it's been seamless, but it's been a very good experience.
Yeah, I mean, there's one of the projects, I live in Denver, and we have a project out by Denver Airport, and I was actually out on site recently, sitting down with our installation team and deployment team, reviewing the property line by line, looking at everything. I actually had my hard hat on, which was great. Didn't quite have the right footwear, though. I got my shoes pretty dirty, but that it's on site. It's meeting directly with the contractors and walking through it step by step.
Okay. All right. So flexibility there, opportunity to see bids before you sign anything to really kind of understand what you're getting into. Okay. So 5G. You mentioned 5G, and there certainly is a perception out there that will hold off on managed Wi-Fi because we're seeing entrants saying 5G is going to save the day. There's going to be just, you order a hotspot, put it into your property, and that'll get you the bandwidth that you want. It sounds like that might not be the case. And before we go to you, because we know what you're going to say, you had said in our earlier conversations, you had kind of done a deep dive into this and come to your own conclusion that 5G is probably not going to be the solution you're looking for. Can you tell us a little bit about that process and what you found as you dove into it on your own?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that know a lot about Wi-Fi and 5G in this room. One of the problems with 5G, we know it's a huge build out. It's a tower every 1,000 feet. We have properties that are, Denver metro area that still don't have good 4G coverage. So, I struggle to see when 5G is really going to get there. And then we're primarily suburban, so 5G is even more problematic. But even more with that, I think the issues that we're seeing is 5G at some point is going to get congested. And there's, I think it's Verizon and T-Mobile had a big gain right now, but they're selling it as a loss leader. If you live in the city, it's not a horrible service, but it's still not as fast as what we're providing.
We don't have it in my city yet, Manhattan, Kansas. We don't have 5G at all.
No comments about Kansas. And we, long term, we still feel like wired is better. Wired is better. I love all the smart stuff and it's all wireless, but that wired connection in your unit is always going to be better. We've got issues coming through windows yet. Like you said, going through concrete. I just think that 5G is going to be a complementary service. It's great. Your phones work on our Wi-Fi. That's really what the customer cares about. And I just don't see it as being an improvement over what we're doing. I've not seen my internet bill go down in 20 years, or my phone bill, and I don't expect to see that with 5G.
Yeah, I was over in the Connect building yesterday before the open house and was on the mezzanine level, and that construction is all concrete, big thick layers of concrete. When I was deep in there, I was getting 1 bar of 5G and it was not working all that well. So I can see that's a problem. Now your answer is not that 5G is not going to save the day, because you guys are investing in 5G as well. So tell us a little bit about, reconcile that for us.
Yeah, it all about use case and how you're going to use it, right? So Dish is launching the O-RAN, or the cloud native, which is the true version of 5G network, that has huge commercial implications. But there's kind of 2 main positions on it, and a lot of people, you'll hear the term FWA, or fixed wireless access, and that's someone who replaces their wired or their fiber home internet, their broadband, with this wireless service as their new home internet. And the kind of positions are, is it, and Steve said it best, is it a complement or is it a replacement? The general position of Dish is that it is complementary and will be for the foreseeable future. And there's a few reasons for that. And AT&T has come out and been pretty vocal about having that same stance. Is very complementary. They see some long-term challenges if we start shifting all these households into fixed wireless access. Whereas, Steve's point, the other 2 main providers out there are marketing it pretty heavily, and they're trying to bring in a lot of short-term revenue. But I won't pretend that I'm a network engineer and what I'm speaking to, but I do have some good sourced points to make about some of the challenges with fixed wireless access running over a 5G or LTE network. And the big one Steve touched on is bandwidth constraints. An interesting article I was looking at in light reading, they said that someone who has fiber internet at home, and then they use their cell phone for wireless access, and then if they switch to fixed wireless access, that they use 40 times the bandwidth on that wireless network, because of now they're powering everything all through a wireless network. And then if you look at that from the perspective of multifamily, so if you have a 250 unit building, and then maybe you have several of them in the area, next thing you know, you have about 1,000 homes that were previously on a broadband network, now going off 1 tower or maybe 2 towers. If you do the math, 40 times the bandwidth times 1,000, suddenly there's huge bandwidth constraints that they're going to run into. They haven't hit it yet because they don't have a lot of customers doing that, but as those come on board, that's going to be a problem, and that's actually something AT&T has communicated, that they're trying to limit that right now and be more proactive. So you've got, the bandwidth side of it.
Spectrum issues too.
Yes. So, spectrum deployment.
There's only so much spectrum out there, and they think they can steal more, but it's not widely available.
It's not guaranteed at this point. They have to negotiate and buy that spectrum. That 40 times number, I'm assuming it's just that it's a reflection of the type of internet we consume when we're on the go, when we're in the car, or we're at the store, versus when we get home. There's a lot more video content. We're streaming. We're on TikTok, Instagram, those type of things, and that's what represents that number. That right now, most of that traffic is going over our Wi-Fi and on the fixed internet at our homes.
Right, and you think about the people that have video doorbells now and other types of camera systems. These are all hooked up to broadband networks. And all these smart devices in their home, along with streaming and their general consumption, if you just shift all that to a wireless network suddenly and then multiply it, it's a massive change in what the throughput is. And I would say the other thing is there are, one of the great things about property-wide managed Wi-Fi is we heat map everything and we understand coverage in building, because there's a lot of materials that lower the gain and the throughput. And you're going to run into a lot of that with 5G. A single family home is one thing, a large MDU is another, as far as penetration into that building and proximity to the tower and what floor you're on and a lot of other things. So there's, that penetration challenges. The other one is smart home tech. So a lot of the smart devices today are built on Wi-Fi standard, and they're not on a 5G standard.
They don't even have the capability to pick up 5G. They don't have that technology built into them.
So they couldn't connect. So if you now have a smart refrigerator that's installed in an apartment and they wanted to switch to 5G, that won't be able to connect until whatever the life cycle is when you want to replace an in-unit refrigerator.
I would say for a homeowner, that's not insurmountable, because you would have your router hooked up to 5G and then they would connect to the router. Mm-hmm. But from a managed Wi-Fi perspective at a community, that's just not practical in my mind.
Yeah.
To have like the leak sensors, the door locks, the things that the company wants to have in each of these units.
Yeah, we need that separate network.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then the last point is, as much as we're excited about 5G and everything it's going to change and how it's going to change our lives, is keep in mind that's not the only advancing technology. So Wi-Fi is advancing, and we switched now from Wi-Fi 5 to Wi-Fi 6. And one of the biggest things about Wi-Fi 6 is it manages multiple devices. So as we get into smart homes, I think at the keynote they said the average, as far as single family homes goes, has 16 devices connected. And Wi-Fi 5 didn't deal with that as well, and you lost throughput and speed. But Wi-Fi 6 can manage large number of connections to a single access point much better. And then there's going to be a Wi-Fi 6E coming out, a Wi-Fi 7. So, 5G isn't the only advancement. Wi-Fi keeps getting better and better as we move forward.
Okay, so assuming there's individuals in here that are interested, we kind of have two camps. We're going to have those that have existing units that are wondering, okay, how can I go back and retrofit this? Versus new construction seems a little bit easier. You're just starting from scratch. Now, you've done at least one retrofit or a couple retrofits?
Yeah, we did one retrofit. It was not with Dish. It wasn't, I wouldn't say it was a very painful experience. We had about a 300-unit community in Iowa. It was older, and, pulling the fiber, had to punch a few holes in drywall. But it took working with our maintenance team, I think about a month with all the coordination. So it wasn't a painful experience.
And from your viewpoint, you guys will help build out the cost for either option, for new or for retrofit.
Right. We can do any of the financial models, and we can do any of the construction. Now, the interesting thing is a lot of the talk in the multifamily segment, we've been jokingly now calling older properties vintage properties. It's a little more fun way to categorize them.
Than brownfield.
Yeah, it's a better name. And so when we look at, vintage properties, the thing to keep in mind is internet's now the fourth utility. It's not one of those nice to haves, it's need to have. And it's not just having internet, it's having broadband speed internet.
Yep.
And that's what people need. And so it's something that eventually, if you have a vintage property in your portfolio, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you're going to need to upgrade it. If you have very old cabling that has limited capacity and can't deliver the speeds and the throughput, if you have older equipment in there, eventually you're going to need to do that upgrade. So the sooner you do it, the better, for a lot of different reasons, but retention of residents, attraction of new residents, and providing that modern experience that they're looking for.
Sure. And so a big part of that being driven by what we've seen over the last 2.5 years of more people wanting to be able to access internet from home. What are the trends you've seen over the last 2.5 years, and how has that impacted your decision making?
Well, it's interesting that I think on a traditional old provider, we didn't have the symmetrical internet. And many of the fiber connections do. We have symmetrical internet, so
Which becomes important for Zoom when you're both downloading video and
Yeah.
trying to upload your video back up.
yeah, and you know, I work from home a lot. I have 2 kids that are always on. My wife works from home, so we use a significant amount of bandwidth. And without that upstream capability, you know, I'm kicking the kids off of their gaming, things like that. Yeah, and people just live from home. This service we can do support gaming. We wired all of the ports within a unit, so people have their separate spaces. But more importantly, we had a lot of people that were out in the pet park, or they were out in our common area. Not so much during the pandemic inside, but over by the pool, and they were working outside, and they can just do that anywhere they want, and it's been easy.
Same
Been
quality of
seamless.
service, same bandwidth,
Yeah,
same quality for Zoom and other high bandwidth type of applications.
yeah. You see kids sitting outside watching TV, and they're watching, you know, streaming, whatever.
Okay, anything you'd add?
Yeah, and to that point, on the managed Wi-Fi being on your own, what we call a VLAN or virtual LAN, that follows you around the property to all the different areas, so even after you leave your unit, but it maintains that same security level with you. So think of it like a cell phone. You're driving down the highway talking on the phone's just pinging the different wireless towers as you go. Same thing as you're walking around the property, but you're on your own private network the whole time. You're not switching on to guest networks or anything else, so you have your own encrypted code and your back-end firewall security to your account, even though you're anywhere on that network. And that's huge for people working from home because you know, there's a lot of companies, there's a lot of concern about viruses and hacks and, you know, phishing and all these other things going on that companies don't want going and attacking their corporate networks, so that when people are working from home and, you know, they're sitting at Starbucks or they're going to these other random places, they're exposed on those public Wi-Fi networks. But this way, anywhere they are on the property, they actually have the enterprise-grade security with them.
And so if they have some smart devices in their unit, like an Echo or a, you know, comparable device, they can, it's like tunneling through, and they're not seeing everyone else's Echo on their network, but they can still see their Echo. They can, that communication still happens across the entire property, correct?
Yeah, and they can be sitting at the pool looking at those devices on their phone. And, you know, an example we always use, and I don't know if it gets used as much right now, is you can print. So if you have your printer hooked up back in your unit, you're sitting at the pool and you're like, I'm going to go somewhere, you can hit print, and you walk upstairs and it's sitting there waiting for you.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny with the managed Wi-Fi network, you can do all that stuff and be secure. We actually had an older property and the network wasn't set up properly, and folks were seeing other folks' devices. That hasn't happened on the Dish network, so it's managed versus unmanaged.
Sure. I think we had one more, and see, yep. So managed AV, and I know that the audiovisual term is kind of a vintage term. How do you guys refer to this, and then what is kind of the value and benefit of not only talking about internet, but yeah, this ability to, hey, we want to have these 25 channels, and we're going to offer them to, you know, the entire property, and the ability to be able to access those from any device using the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I mean, we say entertainment or streaming video or streaming entertainment generally is what we refer to, because that can be subscription based, or it could be someone just watching videos on YouTube and they're just streaming those. But so by providing the streaming service, we're not tethering somebody's TV part or component of the service to their unit, so they can go anywhere, but they can also go on multiple devices. So, you know, there's some interesting studies about teenagers and where they watch video today, and the majority of them aren't even watching it on big TV screens anymore. They're on iPads or they're on
Laptop.
phones. Yeah, and so they could do that. So if you're in your home and you have kids and they're sitting on their iPad in one room and you're on the TV in the other room, you have all this access. Or as you walk out, the other thing, we bundle it in at a pretty affordable price because as being a TV company originally, there's some discounts there, and we also have some proprietary technology without getting deep into it, a smart box that we install and then it distributes, and we also bring in all the local channels. And an interesting stat of live TV today in the United States, over half of live TV that's watched is still the big four locals. In addition to some of the main driver channels that you see from an entertainment perspective. So we also bring that in using an over-the-air antenna, and it's full 1080p HD signal, but we integrate it in the back end so the end user doesn't know the difference. They don't know if the streaming they're looking at is from a satellite or if it's from an over-the-air antenna, but it dramatically cuts our costs by doing it this way and then integrating it so that way we can bundle it and it becomes a true double play versus just a managed Wi-Fi offering, which is the driver for these communities, but it's an add-on that now you have a double play and you're giving everyone that, and anyone who wants traditional TV can upgrade, but that it goes with them. And then because they're doing it browser-based and they're doing it on devices, then they can also switch over. So their TV is in the similar place to what their Netflix is or what their YouTube is or what other media they're consuming.
And the key is live sports. And you guys had ESPN off for about 24 hours, but it's back on now, right?
All good.
Okay. So we've got a few minutes left here. Thanks for your patience as what has probably felt a little bit like a commercial, but I want to frame it as that it's foundational to everything else that we've talked about. There are certainly other providers who you can, after you've talked to Dish, talk to the other providers, see which one you feel like is able to provide what you're looking for. But we do feel strongly that Dish is ahead of the pack. And that's why they're here. That's why they're a sponsor. And what they're doing, we think really does unlock all of the other tools that you can bring in when we're talking about this intersection of technology and housing. Are there questions that any of you have for either of our panelists up here in the time that we have left? Got one here in the back. Thank you. Wait for the microphone. Here it comes.
In a development with multiple units, can you opt into some of these things and opt out? So I know you've got your television channels, but if they wanted to keep some other ISP service or have their own Wi-Fi.
We've chosen not to do that. Having multiple providers it's expensive. It's not really a benefit to the customer. So we provide it on site, they've got it, and my experience has been everyone hates your cell phone company and everyone hates your cable company. And wherever they get their internet, they don't care as long as it works. So that's been the way we've looked at it.
Because you don't want to provide support to all the different type of providers. And because of at least the model from what we saw up here, you're going to be offering it at a price that's lower than what they're going to get it from elsewhere. So you wouldn't even have people wanting it is what I think the hope would be, right?
That's the goal.
Yeah, and I would say structurally, to answer your question, there's no prohibition on that. So especially if we come into an existing property and we're recabling, a complete overbuild, so there's an existing system in there. If someone was to choose to stay on the previous service, they could. It generally financially wouldn't make sense and isn't going to give them the same level of service of what a new managed Wi-Fi is, but we're not coming in legally and saying, no, you have no choice. They would have that choice. It just generally doesn't make sense for the consumer.
Maybe one more question if there's any out there. All right. Oh, yep, we do.
How do you think about, thanks. How do you think about security for your residents as far as internet activity, their devices that they tend to install in the home. Does Dish provide that as a service on top of the managed Wi-Fi, or is it incumbent on the residents to figure that out on their own?
And by security, meaning like external intrusion?
Yeah, primarily.
We don't currently. We have some additional services at the beginning when I showed you all the portfolio of brands. There's one of the brands is called OnTech, which utilizes that nationwide technician force that we have out there, and they offer a lot of single-family services, some multifamily. I'll give you an example. In my single-family home in Denver, I had Dish install all my smart home devices. They came in and they did my doorbell camera, my back camera, thermostat, home hub, like everything, smart locks. And they just came, scheduled an appointment. They came in, they brought the equipment, did it all, and, paid directly to them. In multifamily, there's a few things they do. I know they can do camera systems. I'd have to, circle back with you on their full array. But as an actual security service, Dish does not offer anything that's in the security category.
Okay. All right, well, we are out of time. If you can please join me in a round of applause for Dish as a sponsor, for Steve for sharing his experience.